Welcome to another session in our workshop, Lessons for Africa from 8 Habits of Ordinary Looking American Millionaires. At a time when the world has been to the moon and returned and is trying to go to other planets, Africa is trying to transition from backwardness to modernity in the 21st century. Now, that takes wealth, it takes financial resource. A few places in Africa are documented to have made some progress in this area of enabling society to build wealth. But when you check even in those societies, a few of them, if you check, you do a profound scrutiny, you will see that they haven't gone far. The work of transitioning Africa from backwardness, a backward society, to a modern society, the work hasn't begun. All that we have done from the creation of the earth up to today, we have only scratched the surface. And that's why the objective of our workshop is to learn from other societies that have built significant wealth in the hands of the people, and learn lessons from them and cross-pollinate them with our African reality so that we improve in this area of building wealth in the hands of our people, especially in the hands of leaders at community level, at the household level, leaders of our churches, leaders of our communities, leaders of our governments and local governments, leaders of our families and households, communities. It is very important. Now, we've already said that most of the best wealth builders are first generation rich. How possible is it for people from modest backgrounds to become wealthy in one generation? Why is it that so many people with similar socioeconomic backgrounds to the best wealth builders never accumulate wealth, even when even just the modest levels of wealth? Evidence shows that most of the best wealth builders have confidence in their own abilities. Africans, do we have confidence in our own ability to build wealth? These people never waste time wishing their parents were wealthy. We've seen that many of these, most of them, never inherited wealth. They don't believe that one must be born wealthy. One must be born in a wealthy environment to become wealthy. On the contrary, people of modest backgrounds who believe that only the wealthy can produce millionaires oftentimes fail to accumulate wealth, and they actually remain poor. They remain, falling short of their aspiration. Research finding about wealth building in these societies that have succeeded shows that only 19% receive any income or wealth from an estate. Less than 20%, that is 1 in 5 people, inherited 10% or more of their wealth. That means in their every $10 of their wealth, there's only one one inherited dollar. That means they have accumulated their wealth. Over 50% never received as much as $1 of inheritance. They never received anything. Less than 25%, less than a quarter, ever received an act of kindness of $10,000 or more. Now, these people are not wealthy because they received anything significant. Those who received, it is not responsible for their wealth. They generated their wealth. In the 21st century, Africa holds the great prospects for those who wish to accumulate wealth in one generation. Actually, Africa is the new land of opportunity for those who dare believe and launch out to pursue and tame the potential of this continent. Yeah, people say Africa has very many problems. But as many as Africa's problems, so are Africa's opportunities. So are the opportunities in Africa. Around every problem of Africa, there is tremendous opportunity. Most of the people who become wealthy reach the top without the benefit of inherited wealth. In Africa, we don't inherit significant wealth. Probably over 90% of people in Africa don't inherit. You inherit challenge, we inherit debts, we inherit challenges, we inherit problems, we inherit poor households which are looking up to you. Now, research shows that even in these societies, in these countries that have done very well, people of African ancestry do not feature among the top 10 ancestral groups of millionaires. What are the lessons here? What are the lessons? That Africans is the lesson that Africans are not meant to be millionaires, that they can't. When you check the documentation, the English, the German, the Irish, the Scottish, the Russians, the Italians, the French, the Dutch, the Native Americans, the Hungarians, these people feature. They feature among the top 10 ancestry groups with the millionaires. And when you check the documentation, one of the things documented about them is the culture. They have a culture that favors wealth accumulation. What can we learn from this? What are the long-term lessons we can learn from this? What long-term perspective can we generate from this? Remember, typically the wealthy build their wealth in their generation. They are first generation wealth builders. Evidence, however, shows that when people build wealth, by the second or third generation, that wealth has been lost. Wealth is fluid. This emphasizes the importance of culture. There are ancestral groups that hold wealth from generation to generation to generation across several generations. The Bible says we are called a good man holds wealth and passes it across to 3-4 generations. That you do things in a way that even when you are gone, when you have slept, when you are rested, the wealth continues. Because it has a culture. Our desire is to learn from others and get lessons out of there and build cultures across Africa. We challenge our family cultures. We challenge our clan cultures. We have clans in Africa. We challenge the culture in those clans. We challenge the culture in tribes. We have many tribes in Africa. We challenge the culture in the families. In Africa, you have smaller families and bigger families. Those families with the grandparents and the cousins and the uncles and the aunties and the in-laws. We challenge the culture in those bigger families so that the culture, a new culture evolves that favors wealth building. Because there is nothing now, even in Africa, which moves, which works out without financial resources. In Africa, in the past, you would eat at festivals without paying money. The food, which is documented in many writings, that would be at festivals. Festivals these days have changed. The supply is different. The plates of the food are just measured for those people who are invited. There's nothing you can do in Africa. You can't thrive without financial resource. Our cultures need to favor wealth building. Ancestral groups in America that lead in accumulating and retaining wealth are characterized by manager ownership of businesses. Translation of that entrepreneurial spirit or inclination across generations. Fathers, the mothers pass the culture to the children. The children pass the culture to the grandchildren. So they have manager, ownership of businesses. They translate the entrepreneurial spirit across generations. They practice frugal lifestyle. They are careful about resource handling. While such ancestral groups comprise a small proportion of the population, they hold a much larger proportion of the wealth. So you find ancestral groups, even in America, they're not the biggest population or portion of the population, but they hold a bigger proportion of the wealth in the nation. The wealth in the nation is in their hands. It is noted that the next generation is often less productive economically than the last. Where wealth is created, the first generation is often characterized with thrift, with low status, with discipline, low consumption, risk appetite, they take risks, very hard work. These are attributes of the generations that make the wealth. After these people become wealthy, what happens? What happens in 20 years, 30 years, 15 years? They teach their children to aspire to better life. They direct their children away from the trades that made them wealthy. They discourage the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial spirit. They direct them to white-collar professions. By so doing, they unknowingly encourage them to reject their own lifestyle of thrift and self-imposed scarcity, that frugality. They say they want the children to have a better life, which is translated in finer homes, luxury cars, quality clothing, designer clothing, club membership. That is called a better life. They eliminate from their definition of better life the key elements that were the foundation stones of their success. The children come to learn that a high consumption level is expected of people who spend many years in college or in professional training. So the children become worse wealth builders They become the opposite of the parents who are actually successful blue-collar business owners. Now, these are culture issues, inculcating, promoting a different culture from the one which actually leads to wealth building. And these are areas as Africans we need to capture these lessons and use them to re-engineer and create a productive culture, a progressive culture that favors wealth building, but also retention of the wealth. Africa needs to build wealth, but after building it, Africa needs to retain. These societies of ours, they need to learn to master, to retain the wealth. Research shows that it takes only a few generations for households that have best wealth builders to turn into worse wealth builders. For most households, it happens within a range of 1 or 2 generations. This is why every society, especially Africa, needs mechanisms for constantly arousing the spirit of best wealth builders. We need to do that. Arousing that spirit with the courageous and tenacious people who together with their offsprings can position themselves to replace those who lose the entrepreneurial spirit. That is the gist of our workshops. That's what we want to see. Some years from now, some decades from now, in our quest to transition our continent from backwardness to modernity. Our workshop is Lessons for Africa from 8 Habits of Ordinary Looking American Millionaires. Now, I welcome you to those 8 habits. In our next session, we will talk about the first habit. And that first habit will be that the millionaires practice consciously designed frugality. The millionaires, they practice in their lifestyle consciously designed frugality. Welcome to Habit 1.